Hey, hey. Hey, friends. I'm back. So that was just amazing. Last year was fashion startups because, as everyone knows, I'm a fashion hound. You can tell with these pink shoes. Um, let's see. But this time, the EMA gang has me focus on business, specifically impact investment. I was born into this subject. My dad and his partner, John Paul DeJoria, founded a company built on no animal testing, charitable practices, and creating a sustainable salon culture. They did it all with products stored in the back trunks of their cars, and boy, do I remember that. Old Volkswagen buses. After 4 decades, this novel idea of conscious business practices is now a multi-billion-dollar norm. As today's guests are proof, but hell, any company starts with funding, and that's what our panel is all about. How sustainable companies are funded, trends in investing, making an impact, and what tomorrow will bring us in moonshot ideas. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, sustainable finance strategist at Goldman Sachs, Ridima Yadva. Ridina? All right. We'll sit together right here. Yeah. That's too far away until the others come. So, Ridima, I hear you started your journey as a grassroots advocate. How did that mission lead you to where you are today?
Thank you firstly for having me, Angus, and thank you, Debbie, and the entire team for putting this together. What a fantastic set of conversations. To your question, I think what I've always tried to identify are, as an individual, what are the levers or the tools that we have with us in terms of being able to affect change. So is it policy? Is it finance? Is it technology? And my journey from starting out at the grassroots, from starting my own environmental nonprofit in India, where I spent most of my childhood growing up, to then moving on to trying to better understand the macro, trying to better understand the role of multilateral organizations, policy, and the overall sort of role of sort of global diplomatic initiatives on climate change was important because I wanted to better understand the linkages between the micro and the macro. You see all of this work at the local level, you see the impact in communities, but how does that roll up into what nations are thinking about, what are governments thinking about, and what are leaders thinking about, and what are some of the incentives, tools, and challenges that they face in trying to square those two. And so that led me to working with some of the multilateral organizations like the United Nations and the World Bank and trying to recognize where those obstacles were. And ultimately, one of my key takeaways from that is there is a lot that these organizations are doing. There is a lot that fantastic grassroots level communities are doing, but you actually need resources and capital and finance to actually put money behind making this happen. And that is what led me to my current work today.
Wow, that's amazing. That just sounded so eloquent. What is impact investment, and how is it different from traditional investment portfolios?
One of my dreams, and I hope we can achieve this while I'm still around, is that we do away with the word impact investing, and that it becomes just investing. And that's because I think we are slowly moving to a point where everything that we do as a global community is underpinned, in my eyes, by two trends that are secular and that cannot be denied: climate transition and inclusive growth. So these two things, or these two tailwinds, if you call it that, help us define the world as it looks tomorrow. So do away with the acronyms of SDGs, ESG, TCFD, UNPRI, GRI, SASB. I can go on and on about that. I think the idea is to underpin it or underpin your investment and where you're putting your capital in a very clear economic thesis of where the world is going in a way that cannot be denied by anyone, irrespective of whatever they think about some of these acronyms. So to your question, Angus, can sustainability or impact be wholly aligned with financial return? It depends in terms of what your priorities are as an investor. If you think you want to go with impact first, then you have to take into account the kind of impacts that your company will have in the world. If you want to go with avoiding certain things called exclusionary screening, you can avoid that and not do certain things. So what I'm trying to say is there's a whole spectrum of green, and just backstage we were talking about it, that there are 50 shades of green. And it's literally always about a journey from going from one place to another. And impact, think about impact as delta or change over time. Because no company is the greenest in the world. You're at one point today, and your hope is to be at a more sustainable and more greener point tomorrow. And that delta or that journey is what is impact. And so that's how I'd encourage all the people in the audience today to think about aligning that impact with your financial return and risk return expectations.
Ridhima, you made me want to go back to college. You're so brilliantly smart. Oh my God. Okay, can sustainability impact be wholly aligned with a financial return?
So that's what I was trying to get at, that yes, it can be, but it obviously depends on your priorities as an investor. It depends on what matters to you, and it also ultimately matters to what your vision is for the world that you want to create using the capital that you have. So I think it's important to take into account when as an investor you're thinking about allocating your capital, it's important to have a vision of where you want to go to. And so that's why I'm a big proponent of identifying very specific economic or investment trends that help you think about how you want to see the world, so that then you can take what you have today, put capital behind something that you want to see tomorrow. So whether it's electric vehicles, whether it's better, more sustainable food systems, what is that thesis that underpins your thinking? And so the two trends that I'd mentioned before, climate transition and inclusive growth, what are the sectoral trends and themes that underpin that thinking? There are things like clean energy, there is waste and materials, there's ecosystem services, there's food and agriculture, there's sustainable transport. And just to give you an example, 2021 was the first time in history when investments in the renewables sector in the energy industry surpassed that in upstream oil and gas, ever. And so there are clear economic indicators of where the puck is going. And as investors, it is our job to be able to accelerate that, to advance that in a way that also takes into account equity and inclusive growth considerations, because that's really important. Remember, there are people at the center of this transition. It's not entirely about technology.
I'm dumbfounded, everyone. I'm just dumbfounded. Does everyone have their notes and paper and notepad out? I could just talk to you forever. I'd just listen to you forever. Thank you so much, Ridhima. So let's bring on the rest of our panel to see how impact investment plays out in venture capital. First up is Dan Fishman, General Partner, Regeneration VC. Dan? My shiny personality is coming through. It's just like, wow, my mind is being blown right now. It's being blown. Dan, sit down. I want to sit down next to you, Dan, because the other person's side out, and that's way too far away over there. Look at our sneakers. They look great.
I mean, those are amazing.
Yeah, Dan was like, I should have worn my bright green ones, right? But I didn't get the phone call. That's okay. So let's see. And to round out our impact crew is CEO OSC. Sorry. I just wanted to sit next to you, Dan. And to round out our impact crew is CEO and co-founder of Arrive, Rochelle Schneider. I'm going to sit next to you too, Rochelle.
Where do you want me?
It's a crowded. Where do you want me to sit?
Come on down.
It's a
There we
cozy
go.
family.
That's one comfy family right here, buddy. Dan, you've been a serial investor in many unique and successful startups. How did you decide to lean into funding companies focused on climate solutions?
I started out in the fashion business and the food business. And through being in two industries that don't have the best reputations, I really learned that it was time for me to move to the other side and do some good. I started a fashion brand called L'Agence. I started another brand called ALC. And as scaling to department stores all over the world and working with Barney's and Nordstrom's and Neiman's, the shift was changing. They kept asking for more. more product, more returns, more styles, more colors, and you look on the floor, you're like, look at all this waste. And I went over to an ice cream company, Cool House, where I was invested and took the partner, and we partnered up and grew the company to 8,000 grocery stores. And I went to the dairy plant, and I went to the packaging companies, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? They say everything is recyclable, but it's trash. Or they talk about clean dairy, and you're like, look at these cows. And I noticed that founders had environmentalism and sustainability ingrained in them, especially the younger generation. And I was like, I really want to back them, because it's not a marketing angle, it's in their DNA. Yeah. And so it was my passion, and when passion and business comes together, it's just the right thing to do.
And ice cream.
And ice cream,
That's
always.
my favorite passion, too. How did you and Michael link up? Did you share the same beliefs?
So my partner, Michael Smith, and I very much share the same beliefs. He comes at it from a family office science point of view, also has a similar background in entrepreneurial endeavors. And when we reconnected after 10 years, the idea of building this entity and building this fund to create financial returns with impact, it was a no-brainer.
I love Michael. I mean, he's such a great little character, and you guys together the other night, I just love seeing you two together, and really look forward to spending time with you. How in the world did you get so much capital for your fund? Did I just say that? Dan?
Not as much as some people. But no, I mean, we raised just under $45.5 million. Yeah. We started in November of 19, and we did it in a room on Zoom.
Really?
It was look, the whole world was falling apart and rebuilding at the same time when we started raising capital, and it was nice not to be in Amsterdam for 2 days and then New Zealand for 2 days and Miami for 2 days, but our mission is just in the forefront of everyone's mind. Foundations, high net worth individuals, the environment is it's in.
That's it.
So people who are looking to invest in brands and environment, everyone understands the idea of, with every bite of food, with every T-shirt, with every choice you make, that you can make a difference, and people want to invest into that.
That's incredible. What is your North Star company? The type of company you all use as an example of the holy grail to find and launch.
Such a good question.
It's right up there.
Oh.
I'm going to get better.
Read, monkey, read.
Dance.
We invested into, obviously I'll let Rochelle talk about Arrive,
Yeah.
but we invested in a company called Cruise Foam.
Okay.
So Cruise takes what normally would be waste in shellfish exoskeletons, chitin, which all goes to a landfill, and they take that waste and they have found a process to make it into a styrofoam replacement. So the idea of a drop-in replacement where it acts the same way as styrofoam but has none of the lasting implications of a plastic. When you're done with it, it literally regenerates into a garden, and you can just water it and it feeds your garden. We invested in it early. Yeah. We brought on our strategic advisor, Leonardo DiCaprio, and him and his family office invested in it separately. We also introduced them to Ashton Kutcher and Guy Oseary, who invested in it separately as well. So the idea of entertainment and brand and real impact, it just covered everything that we speak for.
Well, do you have any more room?
They actually will be raising a round at the end of the year. I will definitely send the deck around.
Rachel, how did Rochelle, see, thanks for that. She should have told me backstage. Rochelle, how did Dan and Michael find you?
We got connected through one of our board members who's also involved in circularity, and every time that we go out and raise a fund, we ask our current investors and we say, who are the people that we should be talking to? And he was like, absolutely, Dan and Michael, you should be talking to. And so we met them, and they were a perfect fit. Yeah.
I mean, I got to do a little research, and obviously the research I got was a little old, and I love that you got to bring me up to par to what you're doing. It really is mind-blowing. I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
So what was the process to get your company minimum viable? What was your 5-year goal?
I mean, so Arrive, we're a technology and operations company, and we help brands and retailers take returns and secondary products and become much more efficient with those products. And so 1 in 5 returns are tossed in the landfill. So when you return a product, oftentimes those products are never seeing the light of day again and become a problem. And so what we have built is the technology and the re-commerce infrastructure to actually run these programs for brands and retailers. And this took a lot of testing. And so to get to minimum viable product, it was really like test and learn, test and learn, test and learn. And the last 2 years during the pandemic was really kind of our aha moment, because supply chains happened, and we also do rental, and we run things for Dick's Sporting Goods and Eddie Bauer, and supply chains were supply chain challenges were happening, and we were getting calls of saying like, we just don't have any products. It's really hard to find products. And so we were like, where are the products? Turns out everyone has a returns problem. All the returns are sitting there and are going off into the landfill, and we're like, change the address, send it to us, we'll take it, we're gonna resell it and actually be purposeful.
Cool.
So those sneakers, when you're done with them,
Yeah.
Michelle,
I was going to give them to
someone
you.
else. You know what? I'll take them.
Redeema, and then Redeema, and then everyone. That is so funny. Excuse me. And then everyone. Yes. What are trends? What are trends that you see that are here to stay?
Threefold. One is that net zero is no longer the only North Star for us as a community. I think it's increasingly about taking a more holistic view that takes into account things like natural capital or nature, or being nature positive, if you will, and also takes into account the social elements of this transition. So that is going to be really important, and we're starting to see that a lot in terms of the ways that the financial community is beginning to think about it, or to think about things like a just transition or climate justice. The second one is there's going to be a greater movement towards accountability and sort of 2030 being the new 2050 in some ways, so that everyone has a better understanding of what are the milestones that you're working towards, and that there is a very clear way that you're measuring and communicating your progress. And the third one is public-private partnerships. I think now more than ever, we need greater or more efficient ways of collaboration between governments, civil society, and the private sector in a way that doesn't necessarily cause mission creep or is not about competing. And so I think those three things are some of the things that are top of mind for me that I'm hoping to see more on, do more on, and help catalyze more on.
It's incredible. Can you say more about that? Let's see, Rochelle?
I think from our perspective, we work with brands and retailers, as I said, and so e-commerce has skyrocketed. And since e-commerce has happened, we've seen a problem, and a growing problem around excess products and kind of waste that's happening. What's not going to change is people want to buy things, and people want to consume, and people want to have the best there. And so what we have to do is we start to have to think about the infrastructure to provide people these products that are the best products that they could have. Is there a way to access the product that's already in existence that you don't have to do resource extraction to actually create a new product? And then for the brand side of this too, of what I think is trends that are going to happen is the pressure on the brands that's not going to let up. They're going to become more and more pressured, but they have to come up with a solution that has a margin and revenue attached to it, because sustainability is just fluff for brands unless you actually are talking money most of the time. And so we attach margin, revenue to sustainability, and I think that those are the two big things that we're focused on.
Agree. It's not necessarily a new thing, but circularity is coming back around. Our grandparents, they would leave us things, and those things would be good forever. You would never think about throwing out your grandma's hutch or dishes. Today, everyone just wants to buy something cheap, throw it away. The idea of things lasting longer, being able to keep things longer is here to stay. Retail transparency. I mean, anyone can go online now and understand what's in their garments, what's in their clothes, what's in their food. Everyone could be more intelligent than, I think Asher said it best. Asher was talking about when he was younger, it was music, sports, and just hanging out. That was before the internet. Now it's I can see where my shirt in China was made, or in India, or in the UK, and I know what's in it. I can fight back using social media if I don't like something, and there's no accountability and transparency are here.
Yeah. I'm glad that you said your grandmother's plates, and because I have my grandmother's plates. And
Only
it
one
is-
set?
Whatever she had, I still have. It's beautiful, and it is. I mean, it's so true. This world, this planet, it has become disposable, and I do love how yesterday we were listening to how we had to bring back the silverware, the plates, and reuse and our cups and everything else. It's so important, and I think we're just moving in the right direction with your influence, with all of your influence, and I'm so grateful for all of your insight. Do we have any questions out there for our panelists? Yes, Mike.
You probably hear me without. First of all, your kids must be thrilled to think that they're going to inherit those shoes someday.
Thanks, Michael.
Rochelle, did you say 1 in 3 products returned go to trash?
So-
And in what industry? Is that jeans? Is that industry wide? Because we've created this order 5, send 2 back. My wife tries to figure out
Yeah.
the Visa card on that. Yeah, right. But that seems to be a normal shopping.
It
Not
is.
for me, but for women. Is it 1 in 3 like generic across the board?
So last year, we saw nearly $800 billion in returns flow through the system. $800 billion in returns. That means $200 billion worth of products go into the trash every year.
Or burned.
Or burned. And the reason being is that, one, brands, to your point of I need to try these different sizes, brands have to offer flexible returns in order to be market competitive. The other piece of this is that brands have no offshoot for these products. The industry is incredibly antiquated. If you go into e-commerce warehouses and you really think about, like, e-commerce is still so nascent. It's only been around for 20 some years. It's very, very young, and it's grown rapidly over the last 2 years. So this is something that, like, there is no solution for. And we are in the first phase of e-commerce, and what we're doing is building up that next phase to say you have to be responsible with these products. So yes, it is a major problem.
We talked yesterday about Wolfgang said you can't just take food and give it away, even though it's a nice thing to do. You can't just take food and give it away, even though it's a nice thing to do. You have to do it and package it, and it's a big problem.
Yes.
And why don't they? But boots, jeans, hats, tennis shoes, you could just put on the street rather than burn them.
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons that happen, and one, it's protecting brand equity is a lot of it. So brands want to protect their brand equity. They want to protect their consumers, and they often don't have the systems in place in their warehouses. So when I've walked through dozens and dozens and dozens of warehouses, there's often this time limit of when you return this jacket and then this jacket comes in, those team members in that warehouse have to say, I have 90 seconds or 2 minutes to get this to perfect condition. If you put on deodorant today, let's hope we all did, then like that gets on your jacket. Then you return it, and that cannot be cleaned out in those 2 minutes. It gets tossed in a bin, and then it gets put off to the side.
Wait, can I go on with that question? Wait,
Yeah.
is this working? Yeah. Okay, because now I shop online, and
Yep.
I'm now feeling incredibly guilty. But like, if you put it on for 1 second, as if you're in a dressing room, and you don't take the tags off, and you really don't wear it, do those get resold?
Yes. So
Because I do that a lot, and I don't want to feel like
No. So yeah, those get resold. So returns that come back, that if you can get them to new, so if you leave your tags on, if you really treat the product well, and that arrives, and you're like, okay, well this was just maybe turned on, or tried on, maybe I just need to rub it off, and it's good to go. Those are resold. But still, we're talking about an $800 billion or a $200 billion of products that are not resold, and those are products that are just tossed.
And,
Yeah,
and
it's
it just
crazy.
adds up to things being priced more also. It comes back to the consumer because these brands are not in business to not have profits at the end of the year.
Right.
So
I literally just think it's like you're in a dressing room and it's okay. So this is
Well, generally, especially in brick and mortar, that brick and mortar is slightly different than e-com. Brick and mortar, they generally have a little bit more flexibility, but you got to think e-com is growing rapidly. Most people are shopping, and most people are saying, I don't know if I'm a small or a medium in this jacket, so I'm going to buy 2.
Yeah, you're also not taking it home. Like department store, you put it on in a closet, you put it on a dressing room, you just give it back.
You get your pets crawling all over it. You get whatever this all has to be to to new condition.
We have a question.
Yeah.
So thank you for all this discussion. I've learned a lot. There's a lot of concern that some impact investing could be greenwashed, where it's a lot of people, like you were saying, there's a rising investment in renewables, but there is the debate of you're invested in renewables in your portfolio, but these people are also still invested in oil and gas, and it's it can get really complicated. And I think for especially young people or people that are new to having capital, people of color, for instance, it can be really confusing to even know where to invest your money in the first place. So I just want to know if you have advice on how you can, if you have resources or advice on how people can start researching or sussing out the transparency of different funds to avoid greenwashing, if anything, or how complicated it is to actually figure that out. Just wanted to know your thoughts.
You want to go? Or
Sure.
I'll go.
It is complicated. But at the end of the day, from regeneration.vc's point of view, we build our impact vertical the same way we build our financial underwriting vertical. So we have a partner, Katie Hoffman, and analyst, Eva Wallach, and everything they do is about the impact into the companies that we invest into. We put out forward-facing public impact reports every year. We look at financial returns and impact the same way. We don't want one without the other. And I think that at the end of the day, when it comes to what we're doing, if we're investing into a business, then we look at it as, we don't look at greenwashing as investable from our standpoint. And yeah, a lot of things we probably pass on that might scale and do great, but we have to look at it in both lights. So I think you just have to do a little research and trust that these funds and these investors are doing the right things. And also the founders. Look at the teams, look at the founders, look what they're about. But the good news is there's a lot more content available today, and at the end of the day, it will get found out if you're not doing things the right way.
What I'd add to that is there are slight nuances between public market investing and private market investing. And if you're an early stage investor, you typically have more insight into private markets where you're, for example, writing a check to a specific, small company in VC, and you can actually ask them, show me proof of this, or how does this actually work, or you can actually meet the management team. You can't necessarily do that with a Fortune 500 company. So when it comes to that part of the spectrum, and if you want to put money into certain indices or ETFs or whatnot, your best bet as a consumer is to first identify what are some of the sectors that you want to help transition. Is it energy? Is it waste and materials? Is it food and ag? Then identify what are some of the impact-oriented products that are offered on top of that. S&P will offer some, Moody's, MSCI, a couple of these index providers, BlackRock will offer some. Take a look at what the listings of those indices are. Who are the companies? And I would encourage you not to just take a binary view on saying, okay, if this company operates in the oil and gas industry, we're not going to do this. Because look at what the company is committing to in terms of their goals. Look at what is their transition and CapEx strategy looking like. Look at whether they disclose anything about it. So I would just encourage you to do a lot of research on who are those underlying companies, and then try and align it with what you, as I was mentioning earlier in the session, what your vision of the world looks like and where that aligns. And it might be different for different people.
We have a last question from over here.
Hey, this one's for Dan. This is more a two-parted question. First is a little bit more technical. So you talked about chitin, how the exoskeleton of that shellfish has overlapping use case for, I guess, polystyrene, polyethylene, that types of packaging. What is the total potential impact for that raw material collection? How, obviously it's, smaller right now, but how big could that be?
Wow, not exactly an Angus question.
No.
I mean, I'm happy to discuss offline because I don't have all of the answers. I will say that one of the keys is to work with reputable providers for chitin. You know, there's a lot of shellfish companies out there, so we really start at the base and make sure that the chitin that Cruise is collecting are from certified fisheries. As far as any kind of numbers against it, we are actually working with Harvard to put together an LCA on everything they're doing, both Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. Actually, Scope 1 and Scope 2 first. So those results will be fourth quarter of this year. But, you know, from preliminary, I could share preliminary data with you. I don't have that on me, but it's certainly exponentially better than what these companies that they're working with now, whether it's Whirlpool or Sony or Vizio.
And so the second question is a little bit bigger picture. I mean, I'm thinking about these massive shrimp or shellfish importers. You partner with them, you start getting all of their raw material collections in place. Then it becomes huge. At what point do you get to a scale where you're appealing now to consumer products manufacturers and actual large-scale consumer brands who have such useful, or such wasteful packaging?
Well, chitin is the second most abundant natural resource on the planet, so there is enough of it. It's more a question of price parity. When you look at the smaller packaging right now, they're probably 20 to 30% above styrofoam right now, which is actually a huge win for them, because if you look at some of the competition, whether it's mycelium or some of the bioplastics, they're much higher. So the idea is start with these bigger problems, flat screens, washer and dryers, where the added 20% doesn't really create any big of a difference when you look at the price of the item being sold. And because it's a drop-in replacement, it'll scale quickly into smaller consumer goods.
No more questions? All right. Well, we're just wrapping up. We got 30 seconds. We should just jump up and hug each other for 30 seconds.
Meditate for 30 seconds.
I would like to say thank you. Thank you to this incredible panel. I'm going to get me some hugs right here. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Thank you, Regina.